Nomad Podcast.
Hey, today I'm gonna do something very different. So I decided to invite Ian Scowen, I think is his name. He's one of the hosts from Rabbit Hole Stories. And the topic for today's episode is socialism. What's the deal with socialism? So Ian and I just chat about socialism and how we can not get rid of it, but get around it. So I don't want to spoil too much, so let's get right to the episode. Yo, Ian, what's up, man? So, welcome
What's
back to
up,
another
man?
episode. Welcome back to another episode of Nomad Podcast. And today I have the coolest guy in their space for me personally, because you're like
Have you
for
got
me,
have you got the right guy?
for me you're the coolest guy, mate. You have tattoos. You're like a Bitcoiner, so I always like that. So when you're like this rough and tough, so that's cool. So Ian, Mister Questioning Bitcoin. That's right, Questioning Bitcoin. That's your name. So
That's
how have you
me.
been? How was your day so far?
Mate, the highlight of my day is right now here with you.
Oh,
My
okay,
brother from another mother, you know.
that's sweet. So Ian, as I always do, I ask people how they got into Bitcoin and what's basically their story. You know, how they got into Bitcoin,
Mhm.
what was their thoughts on it when they discovered it. So yeah, just share some stories about you, man.
This sounds familiar with my Rabbit Hole Stories podcast with Joel,
Yeah.
how we got into Bitcoin. So yeah, it's weird being on this side doing it. I got into Bitcoin pretty much by accident, only because I heard about it once a long time ago. And it was just sort of like noise to me. It didn't really make sense, and it was just seemed like another thing to put your money in to try and sort of get massive gains, right? And the first when I heard about it, it was at a time when I was just living day to day, to be fair. Like my work was just full on, working 12, 14 hours a day, shift work, family, married and all that sort of stuff. There was like, I was so time poor and just my money management wasn't the best. And it wasn't until I had some pain in my life, through a messy divorce and settlements. I had to sell my house. And if I think about the price that what that house would be now, compared to when I had to sell it, it's hard to sort of sit with. Do you know what I mean? And then it makes me angry about the whole real estate being used as a store of value and all that sort of stuff. But that's a whole other rabbit hole story. But essentially, it was a time where I was like, do you know what? I need to sort of pretty much reset and figure out new ways that I can try and catch back up to having some kind of future proof, or try and think about long term, because I'm not getting any younger, right? So I needed to rethink stuff. And that's when it was around, when was it? 2020, when I was really starting to lean my ear more into cryptocurrencies, because it just seems quite sort of a good way to earn quick money, right? So I just threw a little bit of money at a few coins, one of them obviously being Bitcoin, and sort of whatever was top 10 at the time. I just threw a little bit. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what any of these coins meant, what their purpose was, other than just to hopefully go up to the moon, right, and pump to the point where I can actually catch up and have a little bit of gains and bank it into my fiat bank account and hold it for retirement. But I suppose I was curious enough, right, to just sort of like, I suppose I've always been curious in that sense, like, why have I just done this? Why have I just threw money at something I don't know what it is, right? So I started sort of scratching beneath the surface, listening to the old podcast here and there. I went for all the shit ones. One of them being fucking BitBoy, crypto, the most scammiest fucking bullshit, hyped up promises of, this new coin is coming in and it's going to 100x and shit. So I had a little bit of that kind of period where I was like, shit, I could actually, if I knew more about this stuff, maybe if I educate myself on what it was all about, maybe I can actually have a chance, right? So I took it a bit more seriously. And as I was listening to stuff, and obviously through that, I was thinking about watching content about Bitcoin at the same time. And the more I was listening to various things, the more I started to question the validity and the value of all the other shitcoins. And then just ended up in Bitcoin, because that moment,
Yeah.
I think it was when I was reading the Bitcoin Standard, I was listening to it on Audible, and I was like, shit, this is something different. And it was almost like that too good to be true moment. And that's how it all started,
Okay,
to be honest.
that's cool. It's funny, all of my friends who got into Bitcoin, they didn't get Bitcoin at first place, but when I showed them shitcoins or just simple stuff that is still, or coins, I would say coins which are connected to the fiat world, they understood that, and then through that they understood Bitcoin. It's always funny that those connections, right? So Ian, the topic today of this episode is socialism. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with socialism? What's the deal with it, right? There are so many things that are fucked up currently in this world. I mean, digital IDs, CBDCs. I'm not sure if you have heard in Europe, AMLA, which is like a finance police. I mean, what the fuck do we need a finance police for, right?
For your safety, mate, of course.
Yeah, for your safety, of course. Yeah, just general thoughts on socialism for today's episode. And my first question for you is, as a British guy, and you Brits already have those talks about digital IDs, right? A social credit system, aka CBDC, if you want to say so, or digital communistic regime. I don't know what I should call it. What are your thoughts on data storage, on storage wise? Is there enough data for something like this big to be stored? Enough storage for something big like this to be stored? Sorry.
Do you know what? I think the centralized entities, right, the government and all their sort of friends, right, they've learned quite quickly that data is essentially pretty much a commodity, right? Data is power. Information is power, right? So the more information, the more data you've got on an individual, the more control you have, because you can have oversight about their habits, their political leaning, their spending habits, what sort of things they're looking up on the internet, and all that sort of stuff, right? And it's good because because you can influence and subtly guide people in a way. And when you start to infiltrate things like the news and education and medical access to medical systems, where people are sort of being psychologically trained to be more agreeable for public and government intervention, right? And it comes down to that thing I said earlier: for your safety, we want to make sure that we're working towards everyone having equal rights. And that's just kind of like a flawed concept. It's so attractive to people, right? Particularly when you start spouting things like equal rights or equality. For those who feel the pain most, it sounds attractive to them, right? And they're gonna more likely be like, actually, yeah, fuck these rich people who've got access to things I don't have, right? So if the government can sell to those people that they're gonna get these payouts to work towards equality and stuff like that, it just makes it worse long term for those same people, right? And it disincentivizes those people with wealth to actually do anything, because they know they're going to get stung, and their wealth is going to be sort of redistributed. So it just sort of stifles everything long term. Do you know what I mean? And it's what's funny as well. Sorry, mate. Here in England, right? We've almost got like a blend between capitalism and socialism. It's called like a dual system. And it's kind of weird how that sort of plays out, because it kind of balances it out a little bit. it keeps people in this sort of middle ground and sort of like wanting more from the government, which means it leans more towards socialism. But then you've got sort of this capitalism underlying current playing out at the same time. Like the NHS, for example, right? This sort of, I can just go to A&E. If I've had an accident, they'll patch me up. I don't have to pay for it, and job done, right? And that sounds so cool when you, on the face of it, right? I had an accident on my motorbike a few years ago where I shattered my arm around the ball joint, and I can't lift my arm up too far anymore. And that was all sort of like taken care of by the NHS. And like, had it been anywhere else where they don't have social healthcare, right, that would have cost a lot of money. And that kind of love for the NHS here is so strong because they see people who are going without medical treatment in like America because they don't have insurance and stuff like that, right? But what they haven't realized is the only reason why it's so expensive and the insurance is so expensive in the US and medical care is so expensive is because of the fiat monetary system that sort of drives prices up, where people are profiting and making money on the back of people's needs, like real estate and stuff like that. But I'll stop there, mate, if you've got any questions, because I do tend to sort of ramble on.
No, it's
if you don't
funny
stop me.
your comment on the healthcare and the health system. It's funny because currently I'm in Vienna, and Vienna is, or generally Austria is known to have a good healthcare system, a social, really a social healthcare system, right? And I just talked about this with my mom today. Socialism wouldn't be a bad thing in a sense, right? But it's misused. Same with capitalism is misused. Communism
Yeah,
isn't also a bad thing because everyone wants equal rights, right? But then
yeah,
it's misused by some high level rich guy which says, oh, you have to be communistic, but I get everything and you just stay poor and the same, right? And equal. So I
yeah,
think that's interesting because when you look at that aspect, that people maybe not dumb, but don't see it because they have it too good. They are too
yeah.
lazy to see it, right? Because what
Yeah,
you said
yeah,
before.
they are too lazy, but I'm not putting all that blame on them. It's
No.
almost like it's obscured, like from their view. They don't understand how it's even set up in the first place, right? Which makes them sort of like, I don't know, they don't have the time, or they're not feeling the pain enough, I suppose, to really sort of like question what the hell is going on. And if you can just like keep it at a simmer where people aren't that upset or that uncomfortable enough to stop civil unrest and people questioning the status quo, then you know they can carry on sort of stealing your money over time through inflation and stuff like that. And a lot of people, I hear a lot of people on social media, maybe it's just my algorithms, but they like complain that, especially the younger generation, like yourself, a little bit older even, that always trashing capitalism. Like capitalism is
Yeah.
like the word that they use to blame what's shit in the world. And they don't really understand, I suppose. I'm questioning whether people actually understand what capitalism is fundamentally. And I agree, right, that in this current fiat system with money being manipulated and it's like no intrinsic value, that people, it's almost like a cheat code in capitalism. People have been able to cheat on the monopoly board, right? By just sort of like creating more money out of thin air to win the game. And that's not pure free market capitalism, because somebody's there manipulating how it's meant to be. And then obviously people are trashing capitalism. But in its pure form, let's say under a Bitcoin standard, if capitalism can exist the way it was sort of structured, I don't know, that's a question in itself. But it's definitely, fiat money is the rock that destroys everything.
Okay, cool. I mean, also, what you just said on The thing with socialism is that people my age, they are so manipulated, not by the system itself, but also by the school system. And that also brings me to my second question. Do you think that maybe our school system is too far left? Because we always talk about far right winged parties, right? Like let's say in the UK, I guess that's reform, right? They always say reform is like far right, right? Oh, right, right, yeah, right. Fuck. Now, now I had like a circle. But do you think that maybe far left winged extremism is also a problem nowadays, especially in schools, and that they teach my generation to be socialistic? I mean, have you seen this picture where like a girl is in Starbucks with like Starbucks coffee, which costs like $12, and she's on her MacBook Pro, which costs like 2K? It says "Smash Capitalism." Have you seen that picture? I
I
mean,
haven't seen it, no.
that's like the perfect example of how fucked up my generation is because of the school system. So thoughts on that, right? School system. So do you think that that's the case, basically?
Yeah, because like there's one thing. This is where I see it. There's two things here, right? You've got the curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the things that the state decide that people need to be educated on, whether it be science, mathematics, language, all that sort of stuff, right? So there's a curriculum, but also alongside that, when these children are in school, while they're on school grounds, they are under the care of. So the school has a duty of care
Mm-hmm.
for those students, right? So they need to make sure that those students are going to come home at the end of the day and that they're going to be safe in school and not get bullied and all that sort of stuff, right? So there's these policies that they have to put in place to safeguard the children, right? Because it's in the school's interest, and if it's an academy, which a lot of schools in this country are becoming academies, right? They're essentially profit-driven organizations that they get paid based on the overall attendance rate of students, and they get paid based on the results that they produce at exams. So, like, they work towards the government guidelines in order to, because they're incentivized to do that in order to sort of get their funding for the next year, right? So it creates this system of dominance and control and universal kind of blanket things where it doesn't factor in individuals and their interests and their compliance within these environments, right? And they trigger these sort of alerts about their behavior when really they're just sort of trying to express their freedom of speech, maybe, or whatever, you know what I mean? Or they're just so fucking bored in that lesson because it's just designed to be a lesson that sort of like only educates them on the narrow parts of whatever that topic is for that subject, right? So we're kind of controlled and limited in what we actually are taught, and they're just trying to meet targets. So that's just kind of like a flawed system in my mind.
Okay, that's a nice way to put it. It is a system will maybe work at the beginning, but eventually it will just. It's like the sinking ship, basically. I mean, sinking ship.
Yeah.
Same with the EU. I mean, look at the EU. The EU used to be something great at the beginning, just like those small countries standing up together against like the US, Russia, all these big, huge financial markets, right? And now look at what has become of the EU. They implement something I would
Yeah.
call a second SS or a second Stasi. I'm not sure if you know the Stasi from DDR
Mm-hmm.
times,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, a financial police, seriously? Do we need that? Do And especially imagine if that's being misused by van der Leyen and the EU. And
Yeah. It's kind of it's hypocritical
mm,
because the system, right? The central entities, the government, they're able to effectively commit the crimes that. But let's put it this way, right? When I was in the police, right, I used to work for 3 years. I was in like a gang unit,
mm,
um, And a lot of gangs, what they do is they go around, if they've got an area, they might sort of target some shopkeepers, right, and say, you need to pay us protection money. We'll make sure your shop doesn't get robbed. But you've got to give us like a fee once a week, right? Otherwise, we'll just leave and this other gang's going to come in and take over. So the shopkeeper is pretty much forced to pay for this service, right? And if they don't keep paying, they're gonna potentially get robbed. But usually it's the same gang that's told them that they're gonna protect them that robs them to force them to keep paying. And if you think about it, if you zoom out and make it not a gang but the government, right, instead, and think of them in like a way of structured like a gang or criminal organization or a cartel, they're doing the same thing in the economy that these gangs are doing on the street level. So who's the real criminal here? And would these gangs be operating in this way if it weren't for the system that the government have structured in the first place? And then the government comes in and says, we need to stop these gangs, we need to stop this crime. And then they come up with things like something I saw the other day from the Tony Blair Institute, right? Tony Blair, Mr. Weapons of Mass Destruction, and his new institute and the Future of Britain Conference 2024 that a few weeks ago played out. And they're talking about data. We need to harness AI, infiltrate or integrate it into public services to make it more efficient. We need to do that with collecting data and all that sort of stuff. And it just creates this system of like forced compliance and control. And I watched a video called, Building the Infrastructure for a Reimagined State. And in this video, there were people from JP Morgan Chase, companies that are working on digitalized ID systems, CBDCs, and they're basically going to merge into this sort of super centralized entity. All these private organizations are going to change policy with government in order to sort of like have complete surveillance over our lives for our safety. So when the government, these entities have all out control over our lives, that's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also it's like in China. China has a social credit system, right? AKA CBDC, where if you say something against the state, there goes your food for this week, or there goes your way of traveling for this week, or there goes your rent for this week, right? So
yeah,
it really sounds scary. And
yeah,
also now with AMLA in the EU, where they check your if it's basically like, imagine that if you buy let's say you own like 3K in a month, but you buy a gift which is above those 3K, right? Like let's say you buy a handbag for 4K. They will call you and say, hey, you bought a bag for 4K, although you only pay, or although you only own 3K. Where did you get those extra 1K from to pay a bag for 4K, right? That's the level of absurdity we have fallen to as humanity. And we said once we said never again, right? We said never again dictatorship, never again socialism. Yet here we are.
And it gets to a point where they won't even have to ask that question, where did you get that extra £1,000? Because they'll just know straight away. Because they've got oversight over everything. There's no way to sort of have your own privacy in your own money and how you came about it, right? Because if they can see everything, they can just sort of like allow like AI just to sort of like pick up these sort of like pings on your movements and your spending habits. And obviously it's just going to be, mate, that's going to be a shit world, isn't it? That's going
to be like George Orwell 1984 but on steroids. That's not like, that's the steroid version. And I know that sounds sweet, but I don't want the government to see that I use like a porn account or something. So if I want privacy, then I also don't want to see that. See that happening.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So but it will go to as far that they're gonna see that you're using a porn account
Where do
if
I
you.
delete my history in this?
Yeah. I saw you saw this video. What was that about? Don't ask, please.
Yeah. Oh, it wasn't
Um,
me. Yes, it was. We saw you,
yeah,
and we saw what
um,
you did when you were watching it.
yeah. So, so this brings me to my final question then. Do you think that socialism nowadays has been or could potentially be a huge problem for especially children in or future generations? Because if you see future generations growing up in a socialistic way, that's not too good, right? But is it then also better if they would grow up in a capitalistic way? So thoughts on that?
I think the longer socialism plays out over time, the more they run out of money to pay for these things that they need to keep running, right? And the more poor of quality the things are going to be, and the less reliable. And I think still people still sort of sold in on the lie. They still believe the lie that socialism is good because it promotes equal rights.
Mm.
And that I'm all for sort of playing fair, right?
Yeah.
And I get why people think, do you know what, I'm struggling day to day because of the cost of living, the cost of food, and the cost of energy. But it's not because that's not doesn't mean that socialism is good and it's going to help you. It's actually going to take away your rights. It's going to erode your autonomy, and your day-to-day living is going to be dictated, all in the pursuit towards equality, giving everyone the same. And that will just stop me if I'm sort of enthusiastic, or I've got a good idea, or I want to create a product. Why would I can't do that, because I'm just going to have to cough up all my profit in all the hard work that I do to other people who haven't worked as hard as I have. So I'm not going to do it. So it's just a flawed concept. And at the time in this economy where it's so expensive to live day to day, people automatically blame, well, it's capitalism then, when they don't understand the inflation aspect. So if we can fix the money, we can fix capitalism, or we can just fix the world, or have a more fairer system, which will disincentivize the need for socialism in a way. But then again, mate, I can see aspects of socialism that are good. I can see aspects of socialism that might still play out under a Bitcoin standard. But we won't know until we are in a Bitcoin standard. It needs to be tried out and experimented with.
Okay, cool. That's a cool end statement. So that's basically it for today's episode. But I just want to ask one more thing of you, Ian. You have social media. That's right. I mean, everybody has social media, right? So would you be so kind to share your social media with us, and also the social media of Rabbit Hole Stories, so I can link that down below?
Yes. You can find me on Twitter, questioning Bitcoin, and Rabbit Hole Stories, our podcast with your delightful brother, Rabbit Hole Stories, and our Twitter handle is Rabbit Hole Tales. Mm-hmm. And you'll be able to find everything there. So tune in, study Bitcoin, and stay curious.
Okay, cool. So people, that was another episode of Nomad Podcast. Mate, it was great to have you. Let's get a beer sometimes.
Damn right.
Yeah. Let's get a beer sometimes whenever I'm back in the UK. So that was another episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I did as well. And Ian, see you soon. Bye.
Take care, mate.
Nomad Podcast.